What, in the larger sense, do you hope to achieve?
Well, I'm making this film really for all kinds of people, but two kinds of people in particular. One is a guy who says, in effect, I'm not Donald Trump. I didn't go in the Capitol on January 6th. I'm a law abiding fellow. And so I don't care if you look at my bank accounts, surveil me, do whatever you want. I have nothing to fear. The FBI will never come storming through my door. And I want to convince that guy, you could not be more wrong. The second type of guy I want to talk to specifically is you mentioned the Republicans, and some of them, of course, have they have economic interests and they are sort of knee deep or waist deep in the swamp. But there are a lot of Republicans who just don't realize that they're not living in Reagan's America anymore. And they cannot take their basic liberties for granted. And so they're not in the position of someone in a comfortable, well-protected town where they can say, yeah, there's some bad guys around, but the cops are on our side. So we don't want to be like the bad guys. We're better than that. We are men of principle, and we're not going to resemble our adversaries, which is how a lot of Republicans these days talk. But I'm trying to convince those Republicans that they're more like the kind of people who went out and covered wagons out west. And you've got a bunch of outlaws who are encircling your ranch and they want to burn down your homestead and rape your wife and take your kids. And then if you say something like, well, listen, I'm not going to go get my gun because I don't want to be like the bad guys. I don't want to fight them with their own weapons. I'm better than that. I'm a man of principle. I'm going to write a strongly worded op-ed. I mean, that shows that you have no grasp of the situation around you. So part of this film is a way of showing you that this is not the same country that Reagan inhabited 50 years ago. Our situation is much more precarious, and we need to be much more vigilant in protecting our basic liberties.
At the same time, I think it is a key point of the plan of those to oppose us to goad us into senseless violence or illegality, the so-called false flag. There is no greater danger. So while America is in a very dark time, I think people have to check themselves very carefully to be sure that they are not goaded into doing stupid, harmful, destructive things that can only then be used to destroy them. Just because our adversaries violate the Constitution and the law does not mean that we should or can. I think that is a vital argument, particularly as I think people are getting more and more upset about this tsunami of lawfare that's being waged against the leading candidate for president of the United States. I'm a veteran of 13 national Republican presidential campaigns, going all the way back to Richard Nixon. What I'm seeing today is unthinkable. It boggles the mind. In essence, at least in two of these jurisdictions, Donald Trump is being prosecuted because he exercised his First Amendment right to question the anomalies and irregularities in the outcome of a federal election, which I believe he has an absolute right to do. He's being prosecuted because evidently some of his allies sought to collect documentation of those anomalies and irregularities. It seems to me, and I'm not a lawyer, but that in both cases, both in Fulton County and in DC, the government's claim is that Trump he knew in his heart and in his mind that he had lost and then conspired with others to hang on to power. I don't think he ever thought that. I don't think he thinks it now. I don't think he thought it then. How they prove his state of mind remains to be seen, but I can tell you in DC, it's very difficult for anyone who is not a liberal Democrat, or more precisely, anyone who's a free thinker or a Trump supporter or a Republican, to get a fair trial. And that is just a sad fact.
Yeah, it certainly is. And look, had they made a single charge against Trump, look, he got these classified documents. He should have turned them in. He held on to them pugnaciously or stubbornly, and so this is a violation of law. We could look at it. But just the fact that there are 91 plus charges against this guy in multiple jurisdictions, it's very obvious they're using a shotgun approach. If we don't get him with this pellet, we're going to get him with that one. If we can't get him in DC, we'll get him in Florida. If it doesn't work in Florida, maybe in Georgia. If not in Georgia, maybe in New York. If we can't get him on a criminal matter, let's wreck his businesses. I mean, this is also transparently obvious. And then you step back and you realize every police state is a one-party state. Now, this is not to say that one-party states don't have elections. China has elections. Iran has elections. But the elections are with candidates very often hand-picked by the regime or candidates who don't offer serious opposition to the regime. And I think that is what's going on in this country. The big picture is that a massive attack on democracy is occurring by people who claim to be defending democracy and protecting democracy. And one of the features of our police state, and maybe a distinguishing feature, is it marches behind the banner of law and democracy and truth. They say things like, well, we're not going after Donald Trump, Dinesh. We are just trying to make the point that no one is above the law. And no, we're not trying to censor or shut down people. We just want to fight for truth and correct misinformation and disinformation. And no, we're not trying to eliminate the leading candidate of the opposition party. He's a threat to democracy. So we have to do this to save democracy. So look at the way in which tyranny is not marching under its own name, but under the certificate of freedom and law and truth and democracy.